Someone you care about just stopped talking to you. No fight. No slammed door. No raised voice. Just nothing. And within an hour, you're replaying every message you sent for the last 3 days, trying to figure out which one broke something. That's not an accident. That's not them, just needing space. That is one of the most effective psychological weapons a person can use on you, and it works so well precisely because it doesn't look like a weapon at all. By the end of this, you will never experience a text left on read the same way again. Let's set the scene. You send a message. Something small, maybe you disagreed about dinner, or said something a little too honest. And then the typing bubble disappears. No reply. An hour passes. Then 3. Then it's the next morning and still nothing. You tell yourself it's fine. They're busy. But some part of you is already running a private investigation, scrolling back through the last 2 weeks, searching for the crime scene. And here's the strange part, you start apologizing before you even know what you did wrong. That reaction isn't weakness. It's biology. And understanding why is going to change how you see every silence you've ever been handed, and maybe a few you've handed out yourself. Psychologists have a name for this: stonewalling. It's one of what relationship researcher John Gottman calls the 4 horsemen, specific behaviors that predict, with unsettling accuracy, when a relationship is heading for collapse. And of all 4, stonewalling is the one people underestimate the most. Because yelling looks like conflict. Silence looks like nothing happened at all, but your brain doesn't experience it as nothing. There's a study you need to know about. Researchers built a simple ball-tossing game called Cyberball, played between 3 people. Except 2 of the players were secretly instructed to stop passing the ball to the third, no explanation, no insult, just quietly leaving them out. When scientists scanned the excluded player's brain in real time, something remarkable showed up. The same regions that activate during physical pain, the ones that respond to a broken bone, lit up during social exclusion. Being shut out doesn't just feel like pain. To your nervous system, it registers as pain. So when someone goes silent on you, you are not overreacting. You are having a threat response that is, neurologically, close to being physically hurt. And on some level, the person doing it knows this works better than any argument ever could. Here's why it's so effective. Think about the difference between someone yelling at you and someone going quiet. When someone yells, you know exactly where you stand, what they're upset about, what you're dealing with. It's unpleasant, but it's information. Silence gives you nothing. And your brain hates nothing more than a gap it can't fill with facts. Give a person a clear threat, and they know how to respond to it. Give them ambiguity instead, and they will fill in the blanks themselves, almost always with the worst possible story, and almost always casting themselves as the villain. That's not paranoia. That's your mind trying to claw back a sense of control in a situation where you have none. Believing, I did something wrong, is actually easier to live with than believing, someone I trust is punishing me and refuses to tell me why. One of those stories has an ending you can act on. The other one doesn't. This is why you catch yourself apologizing for something you're not even sure happened. Not because you're guilty, because your mind would rather manufacture guilt than sit inside uncertainty for 1 more minute. And this is exactly what makes the silent treatment so dangerous. It costs the other person nothing. No raised voice, no cruel words, nothing that could ever be pointed to later as proof of harm. Call it out, and the answer is almost always the same: I wasn't doing anything. I just needed space. Now you're the one who looks like they're overreacting to nothing. That's the design. Control, with total deniability. It shows up everywhere once you know to look for it. The partner who goes cold after every disagreement instead of finishing the conversation. The friend who leaves you on read for 2 days after a joke that landed wrong, then acts confused when you bring it up. The boss who stops replying to your emails the week after you pushed back on something in a meeting. Different relationships, same mechanism, silence deployed exactly long enough to make you feel small, then lifted right before you'd have grounds to call it what it is. And it doesn't hit everyone the same way. If you tend to feel anxious in relationships, this tactic is especially effective on you, because your nervous system is already wired to treat distance as danger, so you chase, over-explain, over-apologize, do anything to close the gap. If you tend to be more avoidant yourself, you might recognize this pattern because you've used a version of it, not out of cruelty, necessarily, but because conflict itself feels unbearable, and disappearing feels safer than staying in the room. Either way, the person on the receiving end pays the same price. But here's what almost nobody tells you: the silence was never actually about you. People who default to stonewalling usually do it because direct conflict overwhelms their system, and rather than face it, they remove themselves from it entirely, while leaving you alone with the wreckage. Some do it consciously, as punishment. Others do it because it's the only response they ever learned. Either way, the effect on you doesn't change. So what do you actually do with this? First, stop performing the apology tour. The moment you catch yourself rehearsing an apology for a crime you're not even sure occurred, stop. That instinct is uncertainty talking. It isn't guilt. Second, name it, calmly, once. Not as an accusation, as an observation. Something like, I notice you've gone quiet. I'd rather talk this through than guess. Say it, and then stop chasing. Every time you fill the silence with more of your own words, more effort, more anxious energy, you confirm to both of you that the tactic works. Third, give yourself back the thing the silence was designed to take, your own sense of steadiness. You don't actually need their words to feel okay. You only believed you did. And that belief was the real hook the entire time. There is a difference between someone who genuinely needs a moment to cool down and tells you so, and someone who uses your discomfort as a lever. One communicates and returns. The other disappears and waits for you to break first. So the next time someone goes quiet to punish you instead of talking to you, remember this: silence only has power over people who are afraid of it. The moment you stop rushing to fill the gap, stop assuming the worst version of yourself lives inside it, the weapon stops working. Because the silence was never a mystery you needed to solve. It was a test, to see how much of yourself you'd give away just to make it stop.